In the quiet town of Westfield, there stood an abandoned asylum on the outskirts. It was a looming Gothic structure, its windows shattered, and its walls covered in ivy and graffiti. The Westfield Asylum had been closed for decades, its dark history whispered about in hushed tones among the townsfolk. It was said to be haunted by the spirits of the patients who had suffered and died there under horrific conditions. One summer, a group of urban explorers decided to investigate the asylum. Jake, Anna, Mark, and Lisa were thrill seekers, fascinated by the paranormal. They had heard the stories about the asylum and wanted to experience its haunted halls for themselves. Equipped with flashlights, cameras, and recording equipment, they made their way to the asylum one evening, just as the sun was setting. The gates were rusted and creaked ominously as they pushed them open. The air grew colder as they approached the building, the setting sun casting long shadows that seemed to dance on the cracked pavement. They entered through a side door that had been forced open long ago, stepping into the musty, dark interior. The main hall was a cavernous space, filled with debris and broken furniture. Peeling paint hung from the walls, and the air was thick with dust. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the sound of their footsteps and the occasional drip of water from somewhere deep within the building. "All right, let's split up and cover more ground," Jake suggested, his voice echoing off the walls. "Anna and I will take the east wing, and Mark and Lisa, you take the west." They agreed and parted ways, their flashlights casting beams of light that cut through the darkness. As Jake and Anna moved through the east wing, they passed by rooms that once housed the asylum's patients. The walls were covered in faded murals painted by the patients, disturbing, childlike depictions of fear and torment. "Do you feel that?" Anna whispered, her breath visible in the cold air. "It's like we're being watched." Jake nodded, gripping his flashlight tighter. "Yeah, it's definitely creepy in here." Meanwhile, Mark and Lisa explored the west wing. They found the remnants of a treatment room, filled with rusted equipment and a gurney that was still strapped down. The air felt thick and heavy, and an unshakable sense of dread settled over them. "Let's set up the camera here," Mark said, his voice trembling slightly. "Maybe we'll catch something." As they were setting up, Lisa noticed a flicker of movement in the corner of her eye. She turned, but there was nothing there. She shook her head, trying to dismiss it as a trick of the light. Hours passed, and the group regrouped in the main hall. They shared their experiences, all feeling an increasing sense of unease. Deciding to take a break, they sat on the floor reviewing the footage they had captured so far. Suddenly, the air grew even colder, and a faint sound reached their ears, a distant, echoing cry. They froze, listening intently. The cry grew louder, more anguished, filling the hall with a chilling presence. "We need to check that out," Jake said, standing up. It came from the basement. Reluctantly, they made their way to the basement stairs. The descent was slow and treacherous, the steps slick with moisture. As they reached the bottom, their flashlights revealed a long corridor lined with cells. The air was thick with the scent of decay. In the furthest cell, they found the source of the cries. A figure huddled in the corner, rocking back and forth. It was a woman, her hair matted and her clothes tattered. She looked up as they approached, her eyes hollow and filled with terror. "Help me," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "They won't let me leave." The group stood frozen, unable to comprehend what they were seeing. Lisa stepped forward, reaching out a hand, but as she did, the woman dissolved into mist, her cries lingering in the air. Panicking, they turned to leave, but the way back seemed to twist and change. The corridor stretched on endlessly, the doors of the cells now open, and shadowy figures began to emerge. The spirits of the tormented patients reached out, their faces contorted in agony. "Run!" Jake shouted, and they sprinted down the hall, their flashlights flickering and dying. They stumbled up the stairs, the cries and whispers of the dead following them. Bursting out into the main hall, they didn't stop until they were outside, the night air filling their lungs. Gasping for breath, they looked back at the asylum. The windows seemed to glow with an eerie light, and the faint sounds of cries and laughter echoed out into the night. They never spoke of that night again, and the footage they had captured remained untouched. The asylum was left undisturbed, a place where the spirits of the past continued their restless existence, waiting for the next unwary soul to wander into their domain. And the town of Westfield continued to whisper its dark tales, the legend of the silent asylum growing with each retelling. Also, in the end, just don't forget, it wasn't just a puppy, so you better click that subscribe button.